Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to go through 2026. Yes, 2026 top 24. So the full 2 rounds of your fantasy drafts, how they should go in full point PPR format. As you can see, number one, we got Bijan Robinson. So before we get to all the other picks, feel free to hit the subscribe while you can. I really appreciate it. And more 2026 content coming real soon as we approach the NFL draft season. But starting us off, as I said, Bijan Robinson of the Atlanta Falcons. Tyler Algier is an unrestricted free agent, so it will be interesting to see what the Falcons do with their offense, but they do have Stefanski, and in those heydays of Nick Chubb, he was getting the ball a whole lot. I expect a lot of ground games. Stefanski loves to lean on the run game. Michael Penix should be the starter week one, barring any setbacks to his injury. And if that is the case, they're going to be asking him to just be more of a play action quarterback, play off of the run. So a lot of Bijan to the outside between the tackles as well. That's the Stefanski scheme. And they have the offensive line to back it up. So I really like Bijan at the 101. I mean, he was, the RB2 this past year and absolutely dominated in your fantasy playoffs. Don't be surprised if he's just the running back one again in 2026. And at number two, we got Christian McCaffrey. Yes, he is turning 30 before the season. However, I'm not going to continue to bump him down. We've seen what happens when you just doubt these guys that are super talented. It's not going to work. So modern medicine, like Derrick Henry had so many good years and still is playing super well. And Christian McCaffrey is just in a better situation. He just got over like 300, 400 touches in 2025. This offense relies on him. George Kittle is probably going to be missing time to start the year with that Achilles. So Christian McCaffrey is just going to soak up the wide receiver one duties again. A fully healthy Ricky Pearsall will help this offense move the ball. Their O-line is still very good. Kyle Shanahan, as long as he's the coordinator and Brock Purdy's under center, I like my odds with Christian McCaffrey. You'll probably see his ADP going into the season probably at like RB4 or something like that. It's just going to continue to drop down. People get worried with age. I know going back in history, 2020, I think it was 2024, he was RB1, or 2023, RB1, 2024, he was RB73 with injuries, and then this past year, RB1. So if you're following those metrics, he's going to have a terrible year, but and CMC was made to kind of break the rules, so I am not worried about him going into 2026, and he's firmly in my two spot. And right after him, our first non-running back for full PPR is going to be Puka Nacua. Expecting Stafford back in 2026. I mean, as time of recording, they're dominating the playoffs so far. Stafford's looking great, probably going to win MVP. So Puka going into 2026 should continue his dominance. Devontae Adams just another year older. Put it a fun little fact here, but if Puka Nacua actually got 0 touchdowns, he had 10, which yes seems a little underwhelming because of the amount that Devontae Adams got. However, if you just took away all 10 touchdowns, he still would have finished as the wide receiver 4 this year. It's his target share, and Matthew Stafford just loves to hyper target his wide receiver 1. So Puka Nacua is firmly my wide receiver 1 going into 2026. And following right behind him, another running back of Jahmyr Gibbs. We're not sure what's going to happen with David Montgomery going into the offseason. The GM said that they're open to trade him. We'll be monitoring that situation. However, if he is or if he isn't traded, Jahmyr Gibbs is a monster. New offensive play caller, offensive coordinator out of Arizona. I'd like this fit. Just anyone besides Dan Campbell or the former OC that was just calling garbage for an offense. So I think this offense will get right back to humming that it was in 2024 and early 2025. But Jahmyr Gibbs is the main focal point. He's going to get the ball a whole lot of times just because even if Monty comes back, he's another year older. This is kind of the poised breakout year for Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs. Like, this is the takeover year that, okay, the committee running back kind of effect, keeping them fresh has been good, but this is the time to fully unleash them. They're in their prime of their career, so don't be surprised if Jahmyr Gibbs still has even another gear to unlock. Pivoting off running back at the overall 5 spot is going to be Jackson Smith-Njigba. There's going to be a lot of debate him or Jamar Chase going into 2026, and yes, I think they're neck and neck. I'm not surprised if in a week or 2 weeks I'm flipping them back and forth. I do think they're a little bit below the Puka Nacua threshold just based off QB play. However, JSN, absolute dominant wide receiver 2 in 2025. I have him as wide receiver 2 in 2026. I don't think this is very far-fetched. I think the Seahawks offense, yes, will they involve more wide receivers? I hope so because JSN was just getting way too many targets. So you should expect to see the targets go down a little bit, but the production is still going to be super high. And that's just being that all the other elite wide receivers, the CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, they all have wide receiver 2s right next to them, even Puka with Devontae Adams. It's not going to bring anything down besides like their touchdown output, but JSN's still going to be effective. I think it makes more sense for their offense to continue to surround him with more weapons so he's not hyper targeted every single game. But right behind him, like I mentioned before, is Ja'Marr Chase at pick number 6. In this situation, he is pretty much a great value at pick 6. Was obviously the number 1 pick in 2025. Let you down a little bit in the sense that those Jake Browning weeks were terrible. However, with Joe Flacco and Joe Burrow, he was a monster in points per game. I think he was the wide receiver 3 or 2. So he was on an absolute tear to finish the year. I really like Ja'Marr going into 2026 with a healthy Joe Burrow. T. Higgins coming back, Zach Taylor. There's a lot of continuity coming back from this offense, so I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be all systems go in 2026. Not much else to say on it. Ja'Marr Chase is just one of the best talents in the NFL, and he's just going to continue to dominate. And as we're just splitting hairs here in the elite, I think there's a bit of a tier gap here going into the 7th overall pick. It's going to be James Cook. I'd be stunned if the Bills don't address their wide receiver room in the offseason, whether that's trades or drafts or I don't even know what, but just get some more weapons for Josh Allen to throw the ball to. Lowers the ceiling a little bit of James Cook, but as long as Joe Brady's still around, they want to lean on the ground game. It's what makes this offense go. So don't be shocked if James Cook continues to dominate. They paid him to dominate, and that's exactly what he did. He fell too late in drafts last year. Don't make the same mistake this year. And then following up James Cook, we're going to go back to the Detroit Lions here with Amon-Ra St. Brown. He has finished as the wide receiver 3 in the past 3 seasons. He just screams consistency. Every year, no matter where he's drafted, he is a value. So not surprised that he falls into my top 8 because he should even be a little bit higher. It's just kind of that limbo where I don't think he can actually be the wide receiver 1. However, I don't see a world where he finishes outside of the wide receiver like 6 or 7 after the fact. Assuming he is healthy all year long, Detroit bring in a new offensive coordinator from Arizona. I like this hire. Should make this offense more dynamic, but Amon-Ra is just as consistent as they come. There's not too much to talk about. He is going to produce. That's what he does. So he slots in at number 8, and following him is going to be Devon Achane. With the Mike McDaniels firing, it should be very interesting to see how this offense moves. Obviously, Achane was a huge kind of beneficiary of that outside zone scheme that McDaniels is patented for, so it'll be interesting to see how this offense functions without him. I still am very bullish on Devon Achane, but getting Ollie Gordon involved or maybe a second back will definitely hinder his upside just a little bit, but he's firmly in my top 10. He is a stud, and you just get him in open space. I don't think there's anything that coaching really does in that aspect. He's a freak athlete. He's going to get the ball, but I do agree that I'm a little bit lower than I feel like the normal expectation would be. I'm just a little hesitant with their head coach leaving, who is just kind of the mastermind behind the run game and getting him so involved. So that's why I have Achane at number 9. But capping off the top 10 here is going to be Jonathan Taylor, another guy that you're probably saying should be higher. However, I don't know the kind of recovery timeline for Daniel Jones just yet. If we knew that Daniel Jones was fully healthy by week 1, yes, he would be higher. However, I just don't think that's going to be the case. So if you have any other quarterback or kind of a limping Daniel Jones into the 2026 season, we've seen this story before with Jonathan Taylor without an elite quarterback. Maybe not elite, but like without a functional quarterback behind center, he is severely less of a running back as far as fantasy is concerned. And that's just strictly due to the fact that touchdowns are presented to him when this offense is moving. When they weren't punting the ball the first 6 weeks of the season, Jonathan Taylor was the clear RB1. He was winning you weeks. However, when they turned over to Phillip Rivers or Riley Leonard, that ship really just sunk right away. So I'd expect them to get in more negative game scripts to start 2026, especially if Daniel Jones is kind of not fully 100% or if they go to another quarterback. So just temper your expectations for Jonathan Taylor early in the season, but if you hold on to him, he could definitely be a league winner towards the end in the back path of the season. Number 11, we go to CeeDee Lamb. I know he's in my top 12. He's probably not going to be in a lot of other people's top 12s. I'm just not going to give up now. I think this is the wrong time to give up. This Dallas offense was so explosive in 2025. CD was never fully 100%, which has been the story of the past 2 years, what feels like. Last year, it was the shoulder. This year, it was kind of like an ankle issue that he came out and said that he was never fully 100% throughout that whole season. So he was trying to recover back for the playoff push, but I don't think this offense will kind of need as many points if Dallas makes the correct offseason moves, but they still are going to need to put up points, and George Pickens probably coming back into the fold. That only helps things for CeeDee Lamb. It might decrease his touchdowns and catches a little bit, but overall yards efficiency is going to skyrocket, similar to like Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins or Puka and Devontae Adams. having a second weapon on the outside only makes things easier for your wide receiver one. So if he's able to stay healthy, I have no problem drafting CeeDee Lamb at the 1-2 turn. And the last pick of our first round here is going to be Trey McBride. He absolutely deserves to be a first rounder. It's weird to see that a tight end is in the first round, I know. And it probably scars you seeing that Brock Bowers was drafted almost this high last year and was a complete disappointment. However, Trey McBride, assuming they run it back with Jacoby Brissett or any form of like a gap year quarterback like Mac Jones or someone like that, I am super bullish on Trey McBride. I think his talent is through the roof. He might just be the most talented tight end in all of football. So drafting him here is good value. He deserves to be a first rounder. He's going to get peppered with targets, and he rounds out our top 12. But onto the second round here, we are going to go to Malik Nabers here at the 13. So that's just the 1-2 turn. You're getting Malik Nabers. I really like him in here. He's great value. Jackson Dart as the quarterback. We didn't get to see them play together too much. However, one thing I do know is that Malik Nabers is a stud. So as long as you're a competent quarterback, you're going to throw him the ball a whole bunch of times. And if you don't, you're just kind of stupid for it. So he expects to be 100% by, I think, OTAs or first week of training camp. That was the latest news, which is great for his fantasy stock. So getting excited with Malik Nabers. Obviously, you never like when he gets injured and misses the whole season. However, it was early in the season, so he should be able to make a full recovery and start week 1 at 100%. Do I think there's going to be a little bit of a ramp up? Yes. Is that why he's at 13? Yes. If I knew that he was 100% right out of the gate, right back to his full target allotment, yes, he'd probably be at like 7 or 8 in my rankings. But until I know that for sure, he's going to slot in the second round, the early second round. But he's a huge value here, and he should really produce in 2026. And then we stay in the wide receiver position with Drake London, another guy with QB ambiguity here. So we're not sure if Penix is going to be fully healthy by week 1. However, Drake London, he just commands targets. With Penix, he was, 26% target share. And then even with Kirk Cousins, when he was healthy, he was over 20% target share. The guy's an absolute baller. He's going to get paid in the offseason, and he absolutely deserves it. I think they'll bring back Kyle Pitts, but even if they don't, that's more opportunities for Drake London. And bringing Stefanski into the scheme, he loves to kind of rely on the run game. However, it makes your wide receiver's life a lot easier on the play action. So it's going to be easy reads for whichever quarterback is coming into the picture. And Drake London should continue to dominate in 2026. At 15, we got Amarion Hampton, one of my favorite early values or kind of favorite my guys for 2026. With Mike McDaniel coming into this offense as the offensive coordinator is just going to be the best thing for Hampton owners you've ever seen. The past 3 years for running backs under Mike McDaniels in his system, Raheem Mostert was the RB3, and then Achane has been a top 5 running back the past 2 years. This is great news for Amarion Hampton. I don't think you're going to see too much of Kamani Vidal. That was more of Greg Roman and the fact that they were just decimated with injuries in the backfield. So without Roman, who loves running multiple running backs at a time, I think you're going to get the full bell cow treatment for Amarion Hampton, and a real big second-year breakout is coming for him. And then switching positions back to wide receiver at 16 is going to be Rashee Rice. Another quarterback, not sure if he's ready by week 1, but it doesn't really matter. As long as you have Mahomes for 80 to 90% of the season, Rashee Rice is going to be in the top 2 rounds of fantasy football. He was like wide receiver 6 in points per game with Mahomes. Obviously, he got concussed at the end of the season. You held on to him through the suspension. However, he didn't really produce down the stretch when you needed him the most, but when he and Mahomes were active, he was a game wrecker, so I really like Rashee Rice going forward. In 2026, he should continue his consistency. Even if Kelsey is back, the over-the-middle targets are just priceless with Patrick Mahomes, so I don't think Xavier Worthy will make any big leap that cuts into his target share, so Worthy is firmly in my top 20, and he comes in at 16. Going off of him is Nico Collins, another wide receiver. CJ Stroud looked terrible this playoffs. However, I think bringing more weapons into the fold, you'll have Tank Dell back for next year. You'll have Jaden Higgins going into year 2, Jalen Noel into year 2. Fully healthy Dalton Schultz, probably a new running back. I think this offense will look revamped. It'll get kind of back to that CJ Stroud rookie year explosiveness. So there will be less on Nico Collins' plate, which might actually be good for fantasy. It's just been so many games where he's double covered all the time, which there's nothing he can really do. It's like he was getting 8 targets a game, but they were all kind of worthless. The fact that he's throwing into coverage every single play, so he was very inconsistent, but I think that's going to shift in 2026. Don't be surprised if Nico Collins returns back to a top 3 or top 5 wide receiver. People will be off the scent after a disappointing 2025, but he's still in my 17 spot. And then we got Derrick Henry. I am just going to refuse to not put him outside the top 20 until he does so. So, yes, maybe you're the one caught holding the bag this year, but I'm always fine taking my chances with that. He is just an absolute freak of nature. So, against the Packers, he won you so many weeks. He scored almost 40 fantasy points in that week. So, if you had him in the championship run, you probably won the whole thing. It's just a testament to his longevity. And with new coaches coming in, I think the main focus is going to be getting this run game going. I think Harbaugh was hesitant to use Derrick Henry early in the season in a full bell cow workload. However, I don't think you can kind of save him for the playoffs anymore. Just play him to win games. No more kind of Keaton Mitchell and the third string running back getting extensive touches. It's fine for a little bit of change of pace, but the 60-40 split was a little too aggressive for me. So I expect D-Hen to get back to that 80% usage rate and continue to dominate until proven otherwise. And then following him up is going to be TreVeyon Henderson. Haven't seen too much juice from him in the playoffs this year. However, to finish the season, he was just super explosive. And I think in a full offseason to really see what actually worked for this Patriots offense, how they can make it more dynamic, it's going to be those outside run schemes for TreVeyon Henderson. He's probably going to have that same year 1 to year 2 bump that Jahmyr Gibbs did. It's still going to be a committee, but Henderson has the explosiveness to really take his touches and make the most of them. So wouldn't be shocked if TreVeyon Henderson finishes as a top 5 running back, because if Ramondre Stevenson were to go down and it was just TreVeyon Henderson, he would just absolutely skyrocket up all the rankings. And even when they're in a committee, he still is getting those 10 to 15 touches where he just needs one to take all the way to the house. I know it sounds cliche, but that is truly the case. He had 3 runs of over 50 yards in 2025 alone on limited touches, so the sky's the limit for Henderson. And then rounding out our top 20 is going to be Chris Olave. In his games played with Tyler Shuck, he was averaging over 13 fantasy points a game. This would have, and his 17-game pace with Tyler Shuck would have put him at the wide receiver 3 this year. So going off of that, do I think the Saints are going to get more weapons involved in their receiving game? Yes. Is that going to hurt his value? Yes, just slightly. So I'm not going to take those last 6 weeks and project it out for 17-game pace, because that's just crazy. So he's not going to finish as the wide receiver 3, but he's also took a massive step forward with Tyler Shuck, who is a competent quarterback that can actually hit him in space. We also get to see that he's able to score touchdowns, which is great because the Saints have not been scoring at all recently in previous years. So getting Olave back into the fold is nice. I think people will be scared to draft him in the second round, but he's going to be a consistent volume guy and is firmly inside my top 20. And then we got Ashton Jeanty at 21. He was considered a bust in the first round last year. However, getting a new quarterback, it might not solve everything, but it makes his life a little bit easier. Take some pressure off of the run game, maybe less stacked boxes for those running plays for Jeanty. And then going forward, whoever the new head coach is, they're probably going to try and get an offensive mind in the system, which is great for Jeanty just because the offensive coordinator taking this job, or the head coach with an offensive mind, knows that they need to use Jeanty a whole lot. They want to get this run game going, so hopefully they draft well with offensive linemen. That's going to be a main focus for them. They had the dead last worst offensive line, so any help to that will severely improve Ashton Jeanty's stock going into 2026. But I really trust Jeanty in this upcoming season because the talent is clearly there, and if the supporting cast just gets a little bit better, he could really take off in 2026. After Ashton Jeanty comes George Pickens. He was the wide receiver 4 in 2025. However, going into 2026, he still is going to be behind CeeDee Lamb for me. I think it's just a little bit irresponsible to rank him ahead of CeeDee Lamb. I think Lamb's the more talented wide receiver, but if Jerry Jones is able to extend George Pickens to a long-term deal, I will be more optimistic. I just don't think that's in Jerry's repertoire. I think he's just going to try and franchise tag him, which could make his life even worse going into the season. I don't think George Pickens will be one of those guys that's happy with the franchise tag. And you'll probably hear about it and get some good body language on the sidelines showing you that. So I would love to see George Pickens get fully extended. I think that would be great for him and this team going into 2026. But even if they don't, I think he's still firmly in the top 2 rounds of fantasy for 2026. That's just because him, Dak, Javonte Williams, CeeDee Lamb, Jake Ferguson, this offense is super dynamic, probably a top 3 offense in the NFL. You're going to continue to take your shots here. He's kind of a more glorified T. Higgins in the sense where he's going to be top 12, but he's probably going to be in that wide receiver 8 to wide receiver 12 range. So you're getting one of the safest values at pick number 22. And going off of 22 is going to be at 23 here with Chase Brown. Running back for the Cincinnati Bengals really came on hot down the stretch with Joe Burrow back into the offense. Multiple coaches say that they designed their whole run scheme off of Chase Brown. I don't think they're going to change from that. You saw a lot of Samaje Perine down the stretch. However, Chase Brown, multiple 3-touchdown weeks in the final weeks of the season. So I'm not too concerned with other running backs being integrated into the offense. This is Chase Brown's kind of running back room, and he kind of determines where it goes. So if you tell me Joe Burrow is going into 2026 healthy, I think the sky's the limit for Chase Brown, and you're right back to where you were expecting him in 2025. And capping off our top 24 is going to be Justin Jefferson, one of the biggest busts from 2025, but he's still at the very end of my top 24, and that's just strictly due to talent. I think if J.J. McCarthy makes even like a 10 to 20% increase at quarterback play, Justin Jefferson is going to absolutely destroy his ADP of 2026. Is he going to be firmly in the first round? No, but that's just kind of the nature of the game. If you're on a bad offense, there's not as many touchdown opportunities. However, even in 2025, J-Jet has had multiple missed opportunities in the red zone where he was either called for a penalty or just dropped touchdowns. If you give him like 3 or 4 of those, I think you have a whole different tune going into 2026. So I'm not going to fully overreact, but he still is in the back half of my top 24. And that's going to do it for the top 24 rankings of 2026. I know this is way too early, but if you have any thoughts or opinions about guys going into next season, please let me know in the comments. And if you have the time, I'd really appreciate if you guys hit the subscribe button. And that is going to do it. Peace.